Hello, Jack.
Hey, Sam.
How are you?
I'm I'm doing good. We're in the post-holiday liminal space between New Year's and Christmas.
Yeah. The they say that these are the best times of the year, the most wonderful time. What's the song? It's the most wonderful time of the year.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I think
yeah.
it's day four of Kwanzaa today. Day five.
Did you see
I
the
don't know.
Kamala Harris thing?
I did. I didn't really think much of it. It was just her talking about Kwanzaa.
I She did not celebrate Kwanzaa.
Knowing her dad, she very well may have.
Jamaican people have no ties to Kwanzaa. It's a Pan-African holiday,
Yeah, but
and
isn't it like uniquely tied with like African American, and it's sort of
yes,
that like
well, yeah, but it's was made by Pan Africanism. I just I just found it very like weird. Like I don't really necessarily. I guess I don't believe that she actually celebrates Kwanzaa, so that was my only issue with it. I think she's lying, and I think that she won, so she really doesn't have to make these kinds of lies anymore.
hmm Well, knowing that like she's or if she celebrates Kwanzaa and her husband celebrates Hanukkah, that means their kids have like what is it? It's like 16 holidays every
Ah,
year.
I didn't know her husband was
16
Jewish.
yeah, her husband's Jewish, but yeah, that would be 16 days of celebration. It's kind of fun. Sign me up for that.
You know, I was talking to a Jewish person about how they feel about all this war on Christmas stuff. And they're like, I'm just fine with people saying Merry Christmas to me. And I'm like, oh, okay. What about, well, can I wish you a happy Hanukkah? And he was like, don't ever say happy Hanukkah. I've never had a happy Hanukkah. Why would you? I haven't had a happy Hanukkah in 22 years.
Mm, that's rough. That's rough, buddy. Yeah. Although I am happy to say in these days after Christmas that the war on Christmas is now over. It has been won. Christmas is done. It's ended. No more Christmas. Dennis Prager was right, and the communists have abolished Christmas. Can't believe it happened this fast.
Yeah. I've been reading a book that talks a lot about the American Cultural War, and it's very, it's all just very stupid to me.
Yeah.
The more I read about it, the more annoyed I get.
Yeah, America's the kind of place where we invest far too much in culture and its significance and politics and whatnot, which I think leads us perfectly into our topic for this episode, roll theme. So, Sam, what are we going to talk about today?
We are going to talk about 2020's movies, television series, and the sort of like the year in review from a pop culture standpoint. And this is obviously a very unique year because it's the first year ever where people weren't going to the movie theaters for most of them. I mean, pretty much since March. That's 10 out of 12 months of the year.
Yeah.
Um,
What was
where
the last movie you saw in theaters?
I think it was Joker. I'm pretty sure. I think there was something after that, but I just can't remember. I didn't see anything in theaters in 2020.
Hmm. Yeah, I think mine was 1917. I think I saw
That
that in. Yeah.
I saw that at home on my flat screen, and I like was keenly aware. I was like, yeah, it was probably would have been really great in theaters.
Yeah, no, that is one you had to watch in theaters.
I mean, it was still good.
Oh, it was good, but the big screen does it great.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like typical middle class white American. I stayed at home with my boob tube, but that is something worth talking about. The early quarantine, or really the whole thing was a huge victory, probably for streaming services, Disney Plus, the horizontal integration of streaming services, and I found out recently Netflix doesn't release their numbers for who's watching what. That's all internal, which I thought was really interesting because we could be finding out that the Netflix is like crashing and burning. But social media, you would never guess that because I mean, in the beginning, everybody talked about Tiger King. I never saw Tiger King. I'm never going to see Tiger King, and I think my life experiences are richer that I haven't seen it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I fell into the Tiger King trap, and I did watch not quite all of it, but like the second half of it, and it is the like engineered to be the perfect true crime TV show. Like upon further research, you can tell that they're like bending the truth, but it's like the people are insane, the crimes sound fake, everyone's just like a wild character out of a Coen Brothers movie, and it all adds up to like several layers of just absolute nonsense and like intrigue that it's just crack. It's basically crack TV. You just keep watching it. You're like, how insane does this get? How deep does this nonsense go? And like all the while, you can't help but like shake your head and keep watching. Like, oh my god, this is like a thing that actually happened. These people are real.
Yeah, yeah. My politics is very are very anti-elitist in principle.
Hmm.
But I would say the one thing that I sort of feel like I do sometimes embody too much is like this disdain for a lot of aspects of popular culture and the people that like eat it up. And I think that shines really bright with Tiger King. Like I was very annoyed by people who liked it. I it was Bird Box was a precursor for what Netflix will do. They will make a very mediocre thing and release it and I'm sure a lot of great people, good people watch Tiger King, but you can't help but be kind of annoyed by like, and I don't want to call them any mean names, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to Netflix and this year and like the sort of content that they create, Tiger King was not their most popular show this year. And actually, their most popular show this year is, I think, the most streamed or most watched of all time, and that's the chess show.
Chess Girl show.
Gambit. Yeah,
Chess Girl is so hot.
I know you think that.
I am in love.
I think reading through your Twitter feed, we can all tell that you do love Chess Girl.
I am madly in love with Chess Girl. I would throw my life away to date Chess Girl. I would do anything.
Yeah, well, about the actual show, I think that reveals the other end of the spectrum where Netflix doesn't make like something that's thoroughly mediocre but addictive, where it actually makes a show that's really good but also extremely addictive.
Yes, Chess Girl was good and weirdly had very good politics.
Yeah, no, it didn't slam on the Soviets like you kind of expect it to. I mean, it's like par for the course in most media where it's like
yeah, Stranger Things just out of nowhere made an entire season about the Soviet Union. Call of Duty Cold War is literally about like the Soviet Union stealing nukes to like nuke the entirety of Europe. The entirety of Western Europe is, if you get a certain ending in the game, nuked, which is psychotic, which is very psychotic to even to imply that the Soviet Union like wanted to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. But then when you look at like the Chess Girl show, look at Queen's Gambit, and spoilers for Queen's Gambit and probably any other movie we talk about moving forward. But the ending of Queen's Gambit, the Soviets were right. It's the communist method of playing chess where you all work together as a team and like study the board and do all of that together. That's how she wins. It's the moral of the story is that like, okay, the Americans may be able to do the Soviet method better, but you still need to adopt this sort of like communal and collective model of learning chess to actually win against these like unbeatable chess players.
Yeah. Again, we'll put some sort of timestamp, so if you haven't watched Queen's Gambit yet, you can skip ahead and avoid the spoilers. But yeah, like they literally say that like she like it ends with her like winning and beating the Russian guy, and she's supposed to go visit LBJ. Um, and she just gets out of the car and like I guess decides to stay in the Soviet Union. She like goes up to all the Russian workers that are all the retirees playing chess in like a park or whatever, and she's like starts talking Russian to them and is like, "Let's play." And the old Russian man that she starts playing, I think, is probably like meant to look like her the original mentor, the janitor that taught her how to play. And it was really
Yep.
sweet and heartwarming. I'm like, wait a second, this is not part of the course at all. This is very uh, Mank too. Mank was like the last big movie that they released. It's probably like their biggest title, I guess, since the Irishman. Who
Yeah,
directed? David Ayer directed it, right? What's it?
Mank.
Yeah.
Mank was David Fincher, I
Oh,
think.
Fincher. Yeah, my bad. Fincher's a big name. Gary
Yeah.
Oldman is attached. Gary Oldman is a huge name, and that has a. He's a socialist. He like is a self. He's like Upton Sinclair's political campaigns to win in California was like the major subplot of that movie.
Yeah, and his all of his like criticisms of basically his contemporaries, it brings it all back to like Citizen Kane, how Citizen Kane is ultimately meant to be like a revolutionary text
Yeah,
in
yeah,
like the eyes of the film. Is it's supposed to be like a criticism of a revolutionary life. And yeah, I
yeah,
think that it's interesting that these films are actually putting these politics in them, or I don't know if it's necessarily that the films have good politics, but it's that they don't have bad politics. They don't go out of their way to do like socialist bashing, communism bashing, like dunk on the Soviet Union because they can.
yeah. I mean, Stranger Things, like again, perfect example of a mediocre thing being blown way out of proportion. But the communism Soviet Union thing came way out of left field. Like it's just like 80s. I don't know if you and I have discussed this. I've discussed this with several other people, but we should probably talk about the Mandalorian and how there's been backlash, I guess, quote unquote. I saw a tweet that was like, because again, spoilers for season 2 of the Man. We're going to spoil everything. I haven't even seen any of the Mandalorian except the first episode, and I only watched the first episode because Timothy Oliphant is in it,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like my favorite character actor that plays like a sheriff lawman, and yeah, I just can't get enough. Deadwood is probably my second favorite HBO show after The Sopranos, and anyway, they bring back Boba Fett in the show that's about fake Boba Fett. And they gave Luke Skywalker the Rogue One treatment where they de-aged Mark Hamill with CGI. And I'm not even saying that's automatically like a bad thing, like if it serves like a narrative purpose or whatever. But I mean, this like the Mandalorian is the most successful Star Wars property right now. Um, like it's crushing. Like the fans of this are way more rabid than the fans of the new trilogy that Disney made. The J.J. Abrams, Ryan Johnson thing, and that's because that this series, The Mandalorian, whether it's good or bad, appeals to white guys who grew up in the 80s. Not even white. They don't there's probably tons of, POC guys who grew up in the 80s that like loved all this stuff. But that seems to be still the biggest like target demographic for like a lot of uh pop cultural media that's pop media that's being made these days.
Yeah, I mean, the new season of The Mandalorian especially has all of those cameos in it. Like first season, it was sparse. They hinted at things from Star Wars, but like this season, every episode, it was like, oh, and we're going to introduce like do this things you like recognize from the Clone Wars, from Rebels, all of that. It's the J.J. Abrams hero's journey. It's the entire circle is just things you recognize, and that's like each step of the hero's journey is just the things you recognize, and that's what this new season of The Mandalorian felt like, because even more so than like 80s, it's just people that like Star Wars. They're like, oh, you can have like Bo-Katan from the Clone Wars, you can have Ahsoka from the Clone Wars, you can have a Boba Fett, you can have just all of these different characters, and then like end credit scenes where like, oh, you can have like these characters that you recognize. Bib Fortuna, everybody loves Bib Fortuna. He's everyone's favorite character from that like scene in Return of the Jedi. But yeah, it's all to sort of like appeal to this like single audience that they just keep coming back to it, and it's just references. It's a floating signifier.
I can't wait to just go on Wikipedia and research Gloopus Shito. The Gloopus Shito is returning for season 3 of The Mandalorian. Gloopus Shito is getting a spin-off series, and they're making in the Obi-Wan Kenobi spin-off series, and they're bringing back Hayden Christensen.
Yeah, I mean, if you watched like any of those announcements, same with like Marvel, they have like 13 different Star Wars TV shows coming out next year or something. They announced. Same with like Marvel, they have 13, 14 plus different properties that they're turning into like limited series, animated series, new movies. It's insane.
Yeah. Have I told you my theory about the series, the dawn of all right, so like you're getting an Obi-Wan prequel story. Now, your first thought would normally be, oh, that could be like an interesting hour and a half long movie, I guess, about like what he did in between episodes 3 and 4. Doesn't need to be its own series, but it is getting its own series. And Marvel is doing more series too. They're making one about Loki. They're making one about the Scarlet Witch, and everybody's getting their own series now, and they're getting away from movies. And I think they're doing this so people have to buy the streaming service, and they can cut out the middleman of the movie theaters. And I think especially now, COVID, I'm predicting that movie theaters will never recover from this. Once everybody's vaccinated, like you'll only go see like a movie in theaters if you like feel like this needs to be seen in theaters, like in 1917 or a Tenant or Dune. I can't wait to see Dune in theaters.
Well, that's coming to HBO, so you may not even have to. But
exactly, well, it's still going to be released in theaters, and by the time it comes out, we'll all be vaccinated. So, but anyway, yeah. My point is, they're doing this so you have to buy their streaming service. That's like what the future is going to be. They're not going to make movies anymore. They're just going to make like this a 3-season long series that comes out weekly still. Like, what is the point of that? Why does it still have to come out weekly? Like, that's the whole point of buying the streaming service, is that people can binge watch this crap. Like, what the hell, man? Like, come on, man.
Well, think about it this way. If it costs $10 a month and you release an episode every week and it's 10 episodes in a season, you may have to pay for 3 months.
Yeah, that's exactly. This is the most blatant cash grab. And I like it's so obvious they're doing this because like the gone is and sometimes I agree with this, like when you look at the Queen's Gambit, that was really good, but also I feel like it could have been a 2 hour movie.
Yeah.
They could they did not need to make that, but like sometimes like things like Chernobyl and season one of True Detective, those are like just the I love the mini series. I'm becoming like a big simp for like a nice juicy mini series. I think Chernobyl is like the model. Watchmen, the Watchmen show too. That was just 9 hours of pure bliss.
Yeah.
But at the
Yeah, and that
same
was
time,
another.
what'd
I
you
say that
say?
was another great one of 2020 is the Watchmen TV
That
show.
came out in 2020.
I'm pretty sure it did. Pretty sure that was like early this year.
Okay, dude, I'm gonna kill myself. I feel like it came out 2 years ago. Jesus Christ. Yeah, I think it might have came out in January of 2020. That might sound right.
October 2019.
Okay. All right. Yeah,
So that was last year.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, I honestly that scared me.
Yeah. No, but to what you're saying is, yeah, it's just transitioning all to TV series because I think one, you can pay actors less. You don't have to pay them movie wages to get them on. Same with like all the people that work on it. You can just produce them for less, and it just keeps the content machine churning. You can just put out hours and hours of content without necessarily having to go through everything that you would for a movie. And so that's going to become like the dominant form of media now, as they keep putting out just endless TV content from their personal studios.
You know that guy in like the 1910s train that would like just shovel the coal into the thing to make it move? That's
Yeah,
what Disney's like. That's what they've made. They just like shovel the shit into the just to keep it moving, and it's getting less and less healthy for our lungs. Just like coal, it's getting progressively like worse. Like, um, obviously there's always going to be things that are like cool. Like, oh, I think a lot of people like the Clone Wars, and that's a pretty good animation show, and like HBO with Watchmen and Chernobyl. But if, The Boys too. I started watching that. I'm like hooked. I can't wait to watch more. Uh, I'm only 2 episodes in, but everything is like for every like they're gonna make every Queen's Gambit. They're gonna make like a Tiger King, and this like the some of it's most of it's not good. Like I feel like most people have accepted that superhero movies are bad now, like, and they're not good, and that they're like kind of stupid and bad. And I think Wonder Woman 84 really highlights that perfectly. Did you see Wonder Woman 84?
I did see Wonder Woman 84, all 2.5 hours of it.
More like Slumber Woman 1984 because I fell asleep because it was so boring.
Yeah, I think that is the epitome of like a lot of the superhero movie content now, where it's not as big or grand as it thinks it is, and it's no fun. It needs to be more fun. I mean, it could have been like they could have cut an hour out of it in the editing room. They could have probably given the script a few more rewrites, but here it is on HBO.
You'd think like the movie being that long, they'd like deliver on so much more. Like my mom's biggest problem with the movie, and I think it's not my biggest problem with the movie, but it's becoming one of the ones in the back of my head. Like she was, Kristen Wiig was the cheetah for like 30 seconds. Like I was like
Yep.
hyped when I found. I was like, I can't wait to see how they do Cheetah. Maybe she'll be just like Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman in Batman Returns. I was like excited, and Kristen Wiig is an okay actress. No, she's a good actress. She was fun. I remember her being funny on SNL when I was a kid. I like Kristen Wiig. I like women. I think women can be funny. I never said they can't be.
Well, not on this podcast. You haven't.
anyway, she was only the cheetah for like 30 seconds. I was like, what's the point of this 2.5 hour movie if I can't see Wonder Woman and the cheetah like mud wrestle?
Yeah, I think that the big problem with all of that movie is that just nothing happens in it. There's like probably 4 scenes where things happen, like actual consequential things happen. The rest is like going from point A to point B, or like introducing said character, or just like talking about different things. And there's only like 4 actual events through the whole
Yeah,
movie.
yeah. I remember was just like disassociating for a scene and then coming back and then looking at it and being like, man, Chris Pine is so old. And being like put off by how like old he is and he's still doing these goofy ass movies.
Yeah, I mean, he's like, actually, I think he's the same age as Kristen Wiig.
They're both like pushing 50.
They're like 40
Yeah.
something, like early 40s, I think.
Yeah, yeah,
But
they're close to 50.
but yeah, but no, I think that Wonder Woman 1984 is the perfect way to round out 2020 as far as superhero movies go, with just its bloated runtime. I mean, we can't not talk about Pedro Pascal as a Latino Donald Trump.
Right. Yes. Yes. I was the first one. Like in my family, my whole family watched on Christmas Day, on Christmas night. Like, what a way to end the most wonderful time of the year. But like in the end of the movie, he's literally holding the podium like Trump. It's the most cringeworthy, like obviousness I've ever seen. He's like he has the fucking presidential seal behind him, and he's like, oh, he's like doing the Trump pointing, like the "You are fake news, Wonder Woman."
I think the funniest part of like the whole them trying to play him as Trump thing was way in the beginning. They were in like the Smithsonian. He's in the room and like Wonder Woman's talking with Cheetah or whatever off to the side, and you see him in like the background talking to a scientist, and he gives him like the Trump thumbs up. And it's
Oh
not
yeah.
even, they don't make a big deal of it, but it is so hilarious to just see him in the background doing like the thumbs up and like the Trump squint. And he's just like hamming it up in that role. He's having a great time and is honestly the best part of that entire movie. But
yes, he carried the movie. His performance, like he's a fun actor. Like I think he's probably the best part of the Mandalorian. And he was the coolest character in Game of Thrones. Which I was bored out of my mind like a few days before Christmas, and I like Googled the Winds of Winter to see like how that's coming along, and like George R. R. Martin has like just stopped saying that it's gonna come out, and he's like, "Say I wouldn't get your hopes up for 2021." And like it's so funny that like this thing that was such a big cultural. I guess since we're talking about culture, it's worth like because one of our roommates was rewatching it, and I was like, I watched the last episode again with him. I was like, wow, this is really really bad, and like we're never gonna see the final endings of the books, and like in the eyes of so many people, this is how it ended. This is it. This is like it's just so embarrassing. That's the thing that was such a huge part of our culture is just like so weird.
yeah, was that this year? Was the finale of Game of Thrones this year?
Jesus, no, it was like 2018, right?
Was it 2018?
I
I have
don't.
no idea.
I'm looking it up.
Okay. Because no, I think that's another one of the great examples of like sort of disposable culture. Is Game of Thrones was the show, like probably the biggest show in the world, like the thing to watch, selling merch everywhere, people wearing shirts of it, all of that. They messed up like the last 2 seasons and it sucked. Nobody talks about it anymore. Game of Thrones has been like purged from the popular consciousness. I mean, I remember seeing people playing like the board game, playing like games of it. You would get ads for like the Game of Thrones app or whatever. It's gone. Like nothing remains to remind you of like Game of Thrones. All of like the actors, except for like a few, have just disappeared into like doing other work. All of the writers and directors have been like blacklisted. They don't do anything big anymore. It's just now it was there and then it's gone.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like I don't know. Do you see something like that happening with like the Marvel Cinematic Universe?
Um, I think with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I think we've spoken about this earlier, the big thing to like tell whether or not it's going to disappear is going to be their next batch of movies where they don't have like the extraordinary talent that they did with like the actors of the Avengers, and they start trying to bring up these more obscure properties like the Immortals or whatever. And they're like, oh no, you guys, you cared about the Avengers, you should care about this too. Like these are movies that you'll enjoy watching. And
Like,
we'll see if people actually do.
that's a thing. Like, I saw pretty much every single Marvel movie since Iron Man 1. I think there's one or two I missed. I didn't see any of the Thor movies, and I didn't see Captain Marvel, but I saw pretty much all of them. I saw all the Avengers movies, and I saw Endgame. And if you want to talk about movies that could have had an hour cut out of them, oh boy. But anyway, that's beside the point. It's this like 3 hour long epic where they do everything. They do time travel. They give a send off to their two biggest characters, Iron Man and Captain America, the two characters that everybody likes, that cares about the most. Uh, the only characters that got character development, really, and maybe one of the other ones. But anyway, you have this epic battle in the end with every single character that they've made fighting, and Thanos, and they defeat Thanos, and like Iron Man dies. Like, where the hell do you go from there? That should have been the ending. You've spent 10 years making all these movies, have it culminate in this final battle. You've like, even if they picked another slew of interesting characters, and you're right, they're coming out now, and they're like, if you liked Iron Man, you're going to love the Submariner. You're going to love Moon Knight. Like, come on.
The worst thing is with these franchises, they're picking up like some of the best actors of our generation. They've got like Oscar Isaac as Moon Knight slated for his own TV show, and same with like some of the other series where they're picking up these like great actors that could be doing like real things, but now they're locked into like a 10-season Marvel television deal or whatever and have their contracts, and we're not going to get to see them in any of those cool movies anymore.
Moon Knight.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that, it's just awful. It's just crap. Like, yeah, like people are gonna lose interest in this shit, and really all their only hopes, like Marvel bought all these people, like they bought the X-Men, and they bought all the Spider-Man characters, I think, or like most of them. And like all they can do now is like that's what I'm most worried about. They're gonna just reboots. Like Tom Holland is gonna like turn 30. They're like, okay, time for a new Spider-Man. Come on, England, bring over your most adorable teenage boy, and we'll turn him into Spider-Man. Um, like, and like, what if they're like Wolverine? Hugh Jackman quit, and he's like done. So like, they're gonna have to have a new Wolverine, and like they're just gonna are they just gonna reboot this crap forever now, like they kind of did with Star Wars?
I have no idea. All I know is that the culture machine keeps on churning.
Because like, let me tell you, like 20, this can be said for DC and Marvel. 20 of those characters are marketable. Like people are like, they're bringing Ben Affleck back to be Batman for HBO movies, and they're having Robert Pattinson be Batman. They're gonna have two Batmen running next to each other. Like people are like, why would you do that? Why not? Because they tried making a Green Lantern movie, and look how that shit turned out. Obviously, they only have like 5 or 6 characters that they can get you people to show up to the movies for. Like, no mom is going to take your kid to see Moon Knight. It's just not like, I don't believe that. I don't believe, I think eventually someone's going to have to like be like, enough. I don't care about Glup Shido and Moon Knight. I can't stop saying Moon Knight. I don't know who Moon Knight is. I've never read a Moon Knight comic. I've only read Batman comics.
He's like Marvel's Batman, and that's how they're going to try and market him. But I think that honestly, maybe you would be able to get people to come to movies if you made good movies, like compelling movies, but they haven't done that for like any characters really. Although the weird one is, you know what DC's like one of their biggest movies so far has been? Aquaman. Fucking Aquaman. It grossed $1 billion. And you know why?
Yeah.
It's because it's a fun movie. People like to watch fun movies. People don't want to watch like Batman be sad about his parents again. They don't want to see him like moping around and like grunting and hemming and hawing. Same with like Wonder Woman. Just make it fun. Make the movie fun and people will like it. Same with Shazam. That's probably one of my favorite DC movies to date. And it's just a fun movie. It's good. You enjoy watching it.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess I think I would rate like that could also be partly because like Jason Momoa, like that's the same thing how we got I think the Dune part is like Jason Momoa. He's like they're trying to turn him into a star. And I sort of feel like that's like if you remember like the Suicide Squad movies, they made Will Smith be Deadshot, and like I was like, well, of course, because in those movies, the only marketable character to mainstream audiences is Harley Quinn, and like if it's a superhero team up movie, they need marketability. You know, it was marketable. Will Smith, even though you have like he's like 50 years old now, and he's like still being turned out into like a superhero movie because that's the only way they know how to sell it. And like so sort of like they're just gonna like I don't know if that's what they're gonna. Their strategy is to grab on to like big names and like get them to sign these deals to eventually sign the rest of their career away into doing all this. Like what's Robert Downey Jr. gonna do now? What's his post Marvel future?
Yeah, and I mean, I think Suicide Squad is the perfect example of like the nonsense they keep trying to pull with these movies, where like they didn't like the first cut, so they hired the people that edited the trailer to edit the final cut of the movie because it's all marketing. They literally had the people that did the movie's marketing come in and do the movie. It isn't, if you watch it, it's not edited and done like an actual film. It feels like an hour and a half long trailer. And that's all these movies are turning into is they're seeing like, oh, we got the trailer shots and all that, and now we have a movie. And they're like, oh no, what if we just make the movie a 2 hour long trailer?
People were very upset when Martin Scorsese said that they're not cinema, but he's right. They're like not. Like that's a perfect example. Another example is like they made all the CGI battle sequences in the Avengers movies before they even hired directors and like wrote scripts. Like they literally just made a CGI fight and made a movie around that. Like that's that. These aren't movies. They're not by definition.
They're theme park rides. Isn't that how we describe them? And I think that's perfect. You just kind of sit down and you have a good time with your friends or whatever, but they're not like real movies. And I think that should bring us to away from like this all of these like mass market cultural movies and like the blockbusters towards like what are some actual good movies this year? What are like movies this year that you've seen that you think like, wow, this is good. People should actually watch this. This is cinema.
That I
For me,
watched
I've
this
watched.
year.
Yeah, I'll go first. Thinking about it because the one I watched like early this year that I thought was really fantastic was The Five Bloods, the Spike Lee one, and that's just a great movie. It was up on Netflix, but it's actually a very interesting film because it like reflects on the sort of black experience of Vietnam versus like what we get in movies like Platoon or all the other famous Vietnam ones, and it sort of like reorients the perspective towards like the black GIs at the time, and I think it's Chadwick Boseman's second to last performance and like one of his best as this like sort of spiritual military platoon leader, and it's just one of Spike Lee's best in a very long time.
Mm. I saw Mank, and I kind of thought Mank was boring, but I still appreciated it because it was clearly made by people who like loved and cinema. And the people's main criticism of the movie is like after watching it, it's just like, oh, I'll just either rewatch or watch Citizen Kane because that's all that made me want to do. And I did watch Citizen Kane for the first time. I tried to watch like a bunch of different movies over Christmas quarantine, and I finished the novel Dune, so I watched the David Lynch Dune movie, which was bad, which is a really bad.
No, it's great. It's perfect.
It's terrible. What are you talking about?
It's exactly what you need it to be. Like when you hear the words David Lynch Dune, that movie is exactly what you want.
I don't even think that was David Lynch's Dune. I think that like he like famously hates that movie because the studios took it over and they just wanted to make like a competition with Star Wars.
Mhm.
They wanted to make their own Star Wars and like hijacked David Lynch's project. I'm sure
Yeah,
he like, enjoyed the book and wanted to make a faithful adaptation.
yeah. I mean, my whole thing with it is it's very much like a cheesy '80s blockbuster sci-fi, but there's still enough of that like David Lynch voice in there for it to be really weird.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. There were the best parts were probably with the Baron.
yeah, where he's like floating around on the ceiling.
Yeah, it's just like this disgusting fat guy, just like he who controls the space controls the universe. Like I was like, oh man, I love that.
Or like any scene with Sting in it where he doesn't really do anything, but you're like, oh hey, it's Sting. What is he doing in this movie?
Yes, like my mom like sat with me for like the last 30 minutes of it, and she was like, he definitely just saw like David Bowie in the movie Labyrinth and was like, what's that? David Bowie's in a movie. I want to be in a weird movie where I'm a weird sci-fi guy.
I guess the one thing that the Lynch movie has in common with the upcoming Dune movie is phenomenal cast. I mean, like the one coming out next year, the one that Warner Brothers is making, incredible cast. Like the people that they got to be in that movie, it's like all the biggest names right
Yeah,
now.
yeah. When I like, yes, I think, I don't know. Do you think like like a lot of my friends that like are big into Dune are wary of Timothy Chalamet because they think they'll make Paul look like and be like wimpy?
I think that's kind of the point of Paul, is that he is kind of wimpy, at least at first. I mean, that's his whole character arc, is from going from what is essentially a very weak character to becoming this like messiah figure. And
Well,
I
he's
don't
not
know
like
how.
weak. He's like a genius who's like really good at fighting when he's like 15. He's like able to survive in the desert.
Yeah, but I still think that it's important that he has like some kind of arc
Yeah, yeah, I
through that.
guess.
And I guess I think that Timothy Chalamet has he has a good range, so I trust him in that role. I mean, people love to hate Timothy Chalamet, but there's like no doubting that he is a, probably the best actor our age right now. Definitely
Did
one of
you?
the most recognized.
Yeah, did you see The King? Is he good in The King?
I don't know. I haven't seen that.
I kind of want to watch The King. I heard it was terrible, but I want to watch it anyway.
Yeah,
I'm a glutton for
it's a,
punishment.
I know there's so many Netflix ones this year that we haven't even touched on or even thought of seeing.
Yeah, yeah. I watched a lot of old movies. I watched Eyes Wide Shut for the first time.
Hmm.
Are My
That's
Eyes Open Now?
yeah, that's a great Kubrick one. I mean, that's his last film.
Yeah, it's the day they killed him for it.
Yeah, also his most controversial. People love or hate that movie. I think it's his best or his worst.
It's very weird, and like I was not ready for how horny it was going to be. Like I knew it was a movie like about sex at some extent, but I was in awe of how much it was about sex. Like,
Yeah, that is what it is about. That's like the whole deal with that movie.
yeah, yeah, it's a movie about sex. It's like if you like sex, you'll like them.
Yeah, I mean, for other movies this year, it came out before this year, but I think the most 2020 movie of 2019 is definitely The Lighthouse. All
Because it's
all
about a
year has had
quarantine.
yeah, all year has had major Lighthouse vibes where it's just everyone stuck in the same place together, slowly getting more and more irritated and losing their minds. No escaping to elsewhere, to society, to humanity, and just kind of stuck on your island.
Um, yeah, yeah. I just loved the Lighthouse. It was what movies from 2019 do you think like will be like the most culturally like impactful. Like I feel like you can't judge 2020 too soon, but 2019, I think there's been enough of a retrospect.
Well, what I just said, I think The Lighthouse was the best movie about 2020 from 2019. I think the other one that's gonna like hold through is The Irishman. Um, I've in the past I've called it the Unforgiven of the mobster genre, and I think that's sort of the same way that Clint Eastwood's The Unforgiven sort of closed the book on American westerns as like the last great one. Scorsese's The Irishman is really going to be like the last great American mob movie because his whole career has been him basically churning out these classics. Then he came back for like one last 4 hour long movie where he basically drops the mic and is like, okay, I did the Jimmy Hoffa movie. No one else has to do these anymore. This is it. This is the best you're going to get. This is like the perfect mob movie. It's all over now.
Yes, yes. Yeah, because like if you look at all the westerns that have been made, you can probably count on two hands all of the good ones, and the rest are all like varying degrees of bad. And that's definitely true of like mob movies. Like for every Godfather, there's like probably two or three gangster squads. You know, remember that movie with Ryan Gosling? Like people, like yeah, a bunch of movies people haven't even heard of, and there's no reason to think about them because they're so bad. John Travolta's Gotti is another good example. And yeah, I think when you look at Martin Scorsese and like definitely like that's Joe Pesci's last movie. Like he's not going to be anything else. This guy that was a big tough guy in the '90s is like going to be gone now. Robert De Niro might like do a weird thing on SNL one final time, but him and Al Pacino, like yeah, all those old actors are like closing the books on their career. Probably going to be the last time they're ever like nominated for an Academy Award or anything like that. Um, and like I could honestly like I don't like the closest I ever got to like crying at a Hollywood moment thing was when the director of Parasite thanked Martin Scorsese at the Oscars. It was like so like very touching. And I think Parasite was definitely the best movie you've ever seen that was made in like the 2010s for sure.
Yeah, no, Parasite is the other one from that year that like this is one of the only times I'll say it, but like Best Picture got it right. Like Parasite is a truly fantastic film. I think it's probably the best politics of any movie to win Best Picture.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
And
Obama loved it too. Obama loved Parasite.
Yeah. Well, I think that we can do a whole episode at some point on Obama and like popular culture and the relationship between that.
Obama's a big Boys fan.
Yeah, because he released his list of movies and shows, and it was Better Call Saul, The Boys, The Good Place.
I think that Homelander guy is pretty cool, and I want to be like him.
Yeah, I mean that's the question that comes with every Obama list where it's something like Parasite or The Boys is on it. It's like, okay, does he not get it, or does he not care?
Yeah, which camp are you in? I think he doesn't care. I think he definitely got the point of The Boys and is like, this is about people like me, but it's still really good.
Yeah, no, I think that Barack Obama is not stupid. Anyone that thinks Obama is stupid is wrong. That is like, love him or hate him, he is a very smart man, and I don't think that something as subtle and nuanced as The Boys would go over his head.
I am 2 episodes in, and it is not subtle.
Exactly.
It's not subtle. I was expecting it to be subtle. I was expecting, I knew it was about bad superheroes, corporate controlled superheroes that are bad. And I was expecting it to be very carefully like layered. Like, no, it is very explicit about what it believes, what its politics are. Same thing with Parasite. Like, I mean, come on. Like, as amazing as a movie it was, I think it did subtlety and overtness very well. I'll say that because like even if you went in knowing nothing about it, like by the time the credits were rolling, you were like, I think the rich family were the parasite. I mean, the scene where he's driving her is like it's like a meme now of how like obvious,
Yeah, no, and I think that there are like the subtle elements in the boys, and especially as you get further into it, I'm not going to spoil it for you. They do have a lot of these more subtle and interesting pieces to it, but it is not a subtle show. It beats you over the head with like the hey, look, this guy in the American flag, he's the bad guy. He is not a good character. He is awful, and I think that it's not going to be like Barack Obama watching the boys like, oh, geez, I think Homelander's the good guy. It's he gets it. And he doesn't care.
Okay, speaking of the American flag used as a symbol for evil, we have to talk about this. I don't know how aware of it you are, but the podcast Chapo Trap House, who they're like a younger sibling of ours in terms of podcast popularity, and they are trying to rehabilitate the James Cameron Avatar movie, and it's spawning this like campaign on the Twitter left of like, no, actually, the Avatar movie is great, and everybody should watch it and enjoy it because it has amazing politics that I agree with. And after reading analysis of it, I'm like, yes, wow, it has very good politics about abandoning your whiteness, whiteness versus white saviorism, um, anti-imperialism. Amazing, truly extraordinary, but it's not a good movie. I don't like it. It's not an entertaining movie at all.
Yeah, no, I would say it's a good movie. You can watch it, you can enjoy it. It has great politics. I don't understand how it's been placed on this pedestal. I mean, they've put a lot of effort into like rehabilitating it as not just a good movie, but a great movie. And not just a great movie, but like an all-time great. And I don't know about that. I don't think that Avatar, actually, I think Avatar is suffering from the same effect as like Game of Thrones, in like how it was this big cultural touchstone that just it's gone. It disappeared, and people liked it. People loved it. People saw it 5, 10 times in theater and whatever. But it doesn't have a lasting cultural impact, and I think that's because of the fact that when it came out, it was really just big for like the visual spectacle, and it's a beautiful movie. It's incredibly like impressive how it was put together and all of the work that went into every single detail of it. But that doesn't make it a great movie.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think
and
that
like,
like yeah, I was gonna say like content wise and like structurally, yeah, it's like good enough, but I don't think it like transcends the medium in the way that other films do.
yeah,
Yeah.
and like, I think that is the irony not lost on them that like 10 years later they like we're making four sequels to it. Like, doesn't it, that's sort of like a very emotionally hollow, like pitiful cash grab. And like my main concern is that I don't think Sam Worthington is a very good actor. That's like he's going to have his career comeback now, and I don't think that's necessarily like the best look right now.
Yeah. Well, if not Sam Worthington, you can replace him with like Jai Courtney or that guy from Suicide Squad or like any of the other actors that have shaved heads and stubble and look about the same. You can get like any number of like vaguely military looking white dudes with shaved heads.
Jason
There are a
Statham.
lot of them. Yeah,
Yeah.
there are lots of them in Hollywood.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's weird. Um, you can have great politics and be bad, and you can have terrible politics and be very good, like the Dark Knight trilogy.
Yeah, and I think that's the Dark Knight. The Dark Knight I will always hold up as like a great movie with some of the worst politics of any film released in like the last 2 decades. I mean, I know you've said like Wonder Woman 84's politics are bad, but I think it's just so empty and vapid that I can hardly call it like bad politics. But like the Dark Knight's bad politics are like pervasive through every like thematic and story element in the entire film.
Yeah, yeah. Yes. Well, I think Wonder Woman's politics were very terrible. I don't think it's as bad as what was essentially just apologizing for the Bush era, which was all those movies were. Was like Christopher Nolan is probably like Interstellar 2 has bad politics, and like he's very like explicitly like right wing, and it's kind of like and he makes good movies. I don't think they're as good as people claim. I think a lot of people put Christopher Nolan on an unfair pedestal. Inception is not. Memento sucks. I don't like Memento at all.
Oh, I really like Memento. I think the thing with Christopher Nolan isn't so much that he consistently makes great movies, but more so the fact that he has yet to make a straight up bad movie.
Yeah.
And there are very few directors working now that I would say pretty safely, like, wow, they haven't made a bad movie. But like getting back to The Dark Knight, when you look at like what it's about and like throughout the whole runtime, it's basically a rich guy trying to find this clown, but like throughout the whole story, what does Batman do? Oh, he illegally extradites a Hong Kong national from Hong Kong back to Gotham City. What else does he do? Oh, he does a Patriot Act. He, without consent, taps every single person's phone to create a ultra sonar map of the city. That's pretty sketchy. That's pretty bad. GCPD does a lot of really sketchy nonsense throughout that movie. Another main character who is the hero for a while, his entire goal is to lock up as many people in prison as possible, fill up the Gotham City jails by any means necessary.
Gordon harbors, protects, and builds a special team just full of dirty, corrupt cops. I watched it recently and just picked up on that. When I first saw it, I was a kid, so I didn't understand. But it's funny how a bunch of scenes in that movie, the scenes where it's just Harvey Dent and Gary Oldman talking, could be a scene from The Departed or something about I know you have crooked cops working down there, Gordon, and then Batman shows up in his tights and his underwear and he's like, "Where's the sugar?" It's such a great movie, and I think when people talk about how bad that movie's politics are, you kind of have to face the fact that the superhero movies are inherently very right wing. Think about it. The Dark Knight is the best superhero movie. No superhero movie will be as good as that one, and his politics are about as far right as they come.
Well, my only counter is the one superhero movie that I would put on par with The Dark Knight that actually has good politics is Logan.
I have not seen Logan. I'll admit the Sony X-Men movies are not really my forte. I only saw the first three. The bad ones.
Logan is more Western, but the plot in simple terms is about Wolverine trying to protect a bunch of migrant children and bring them over the border where they cannot be touched by the United States government.
That is pretty good.
Yeah. And that's the only superhero movie with good politics, because I can actually say that it is libertarian left on the political spectrum, whereas The Dark Knight is authoritarian right. They're two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, and I think whenever people want to ask what politics do superhero movies espouse that are so bad, I tell them you should read Watchmen, and you should look closely at the relationship between Rorschach and Night Owl, and how Rorschach is openly I'm a fascist. I make no scruples about that, and Dan Night Owl is a liberal kind of guy who is constantly telling Rorschach you can't be doing this, man, but at the same time is always apologizing for him, making excuses for it. And I think that's a great example of current U.S. politics and really the relationship between liberalism and not outright fascism, but sort of this far right conservative force that exists, and that's embodied that superheroes are either Night Owl or Rorschach. They either have no scruples about fascism or they're constantly trying to apologize for it. And go ahead.
Yeah, I think that what makes that even clearer is if you didn't get the point from the comic book, the new HBO series, I think takes it that one step further, where you see that the alt-right militia guys, the new KKK, are all dudes in Rorschach masks, and they're facing off against a very liberal government that's also running basically a militarized police force.
Yeah, that it wears masks and is held accountable to nobody. Yeah. When I saw the first episode of Watchmen, I'm am I really gonna have to side between white supremacists and masked cops with no regard for civil liberties? But luckily, in like the end of the first episode, beginning of the second episode, they very immediately like blur the lines, and I'm like, oh, okay, no, this actually is going to be very, very smart and sophisticated.
Yeah. Well, we'll toss that on the list of other superhero content with good politics, but the only ones with good politics are direct critiques of the bad politics of other superhero media.
Yeah, like the boys.
Yeah. And even like Logan, these all are meant to stand in contrast with like the X-Men, the Justice League, Avengers movies.
I'll have to give
Sort
that a
of
chance.
show.
I'll have to watch Logan sometime.
Oh, highly recommend. Fantastic one. But yeah, I think that brings us to the end of our conversation about movies.
Yeah, sure. We covered a lot of topics, and I think
Yeah,
that if there's one that we touched on that you would like us to go further in depth on, like, like I said, I already told you, and this is a topic for a different episode, but if I were to write one book, what it would be about, if I were to write a second book, it would probably be about the concept of superhero and how it's like inherently fascist. I feel like that's something we sort of scratched the surface on here, but we could go a lot further in depth on that. But if there's anything else that we touched on that you'd like us to go further in depth on, you should reach out to us and let us know, because political theory and economics, that's sort of like what we do for homework. So all these things, this is like our fun side act. These are our side experiments right here.
yeah, and absolutely. On top of like the whole cultural thing, we can even get further into like the philosophy of these things for fun if current events start to bog us down a bit. So yeah, reach out to us on Twitter at PodSaveYourSoul. Comment, let us know what you'd like to hear about more in depth.
And call your senator and demand they support $2,000 stimulus checks to American workers.
Oh, absolutely. Get on that, because $2,000 is a good thing, and the American people deserve it at this point. But, yeah, that's all for this week. Talk to you again next week.
Talk to you in 2021.
Yeah, that's right. This is the last one of the year.